It occurs before you have spoken a solitary word to anyone, as you wake up and instantly feel that dense, viscous sensation resting at the back of your throat. Consequently, you clear your throat, making that brief, familiar noise that you have repeated thousands of times before. Then, just an hour afterward, you repeat the action. Once lunch is finished, you do it yet again. By the time your day concludes, you have cleared your throat far more times than you could ever hope to calculate. And here is the crucial piece of information that almost no one shares with you. The very habits you practice to eliminate that phlegm are the precise reasons why it remains trapped there. I will emphasize this point once more because it represents the core message of this presentation, which is that the remedies you seek to resolve this sensation are, for the majority of individuals, the exact behaviors nurturing it. Tonight, if you perform any of the 5 actions I am about to detail, there is a strong probability that your throat will feel more irritated tomorrow rather than improved. This is not because your physical system is failing you, but rather because the standard guidance for this issue addresses the incorrect source. However, I will not simply leave you stranded with this frustrating issue. By the conclusion of this discussion, you will possess a straightforward, uncomplicated strategy detailing the sequential steps required to allow your airway to clear naturally, without relying on commercial gimmicks or superficial sprays, focusing purely on the physiological mechanism and the ultimate solution. Therefore, let me dedicate the time to you that a brief clinical appointment never permits. We will examine these factors individually and carefully, and by the end, you will comprehend your own vocal anatomy far better than any brief medical consultation could ever explain. Before we begin, let us establish one candid reality, which is that walking down any drugstore aisle reveals an entire section of aerosol sprays and liquid syrups marketed specifically for this exact sensation. The majority of these products merely suppress the physical feeling for several hours, ultimately prompting you to return for another purchase the following week. This does not stem from some elaborate corporate conspiracy, as the reality is much simpler, which is that temporary relief sells far more consistently than a permanent cure. Thus, let me provide you with the actual remedy instead. The first mistake is the physical act of throat clearing itself. This is the behavior that virtually everyone exhibits, and it is also the one that catches people most off guard. You sense the congestion, you perform a brief cough to dislodge it, and because it feels slightly better for a fleeting moment, your subconscious mind registers this action as the correct answer. In truth, it is not the resolution of your problem, but rather the very engine driving it. This is what truly occurs within your airway when you generate that harsh clearing noise, as you forcefully strike your vocal folds together at high velocity and pull a turbulent wave of air across the delicate surface of your throat. That internal lining consists of highly sensitive, living cellular tissue. Medical investigators analyzing persistent coughing and vocal clearing state quite clearly that recurrent clearing behaves as a direct mechanical irritant on the respiratory tract. To put it simply, every forceful clear is equivalent to a microscopic scratch against an already inflamed area, and irritated tissue responds in only one way, which is to defend itself by producing additional protective fluid. Thus, trace this continuous cycle with me, where you clear to expel the fluid, the physical clearing inflames the surface, the irritated lining generates more secretions, and because you feel those new secretions, you clear your throat once more. You are not losing an unavoidable battle, but rather actively sustaining the conflict. Consider this scenario as being highly similar to a dry, flaky patch of skin on the back of your hand. It becomes itchy, you scratch it for temporary comfort, but then the skin becomes further inflamed, and the itching intensifies, prompting you to scratch it yet again. The physical act of scratching never resolves the underlying irritation, as it is actually the worst contributor to the itch. Your habit of clearing your throat represents this identical trap, merely occurring in an area hidden from your sight. Here is your initial corrective action, which you can implement this very moment. So when you feel the sudden impulse to clear, resist it, and instead swallow forcefully or consume a small sip of water. A firm swallow relieves the physical sensation in the natural, non-abrasive manner your body was biologically designed to utilize, without causing any abrasive friction. Each time you substitute a swallow for a harsh clear, you grant the delicate mucosal lining an opportunity to recover. You will inevitably catch yourself repeating the old habit frequently in the beginning, which is perfectly normal, so simply focus on making the substitution each time. As a brief aside, share your experience in the feedback section below if you find yourself clearing your airway entirely on autopilot, as I would love to discover how many of us share this unconscious routine. The second error involves immediately reaching for a medicated decongestant spray. This course of action seems entirely rational, given that your throat is congested and your nasal passages feel blocked. prompting you to purchase one of those small over-the-counter bottles. During your initial use, the effect is nearly miraculous, as within moments your nasal passages clear and your upper airway feels open, leading you to apply it again the subsequent evening and the nights that follow. Yet there is a hidden pitfall engineered directly into those pharmaceutical formulations. Typical retail decongestant sprays function by constricting the blood vessels within your nasal passages to rapidly reduce tissue swelling, which explains why your respiration improves so dramatically. However, your delicate nasal membranes do not tolerate this artificial constriction for very long. Once the pharmacological effects diminish, those identical blood vessels dilate once more, and they frequently expand even wider than their original size. Major medical centers like the Mayo Clinic and the Cleveland Clinic explain this physiological process clearly, warning that utilizing these sprays for more than 3 consecutive days can trigger a condition known medically as rhinitis medicamentosa or rebound swelling, which is congestion directly provoked by the very medication intended to relieve it. Consequently, your nasal passages end up far more obstructed than they were before you initiated treatment. To find relief, you instinctively reach for more of the same aerosol. This action causes the dependency loop to tighten significantly. Visualize a metal coil compressed beneath your thumb, where pushing it down makes it compact, representing the temporary relief, but the instant you release the pressure, it recoils powerfully and extends to an even greater height than its original state. Each application yields a progressively shorter interval of comfort followed by a more intense rebound swelling, which is precisely how your nasal passages react to chronic decongestant use. This reaction directly impacts your throat, as inflamed, rebounding nasal tissues produce excess secretions that continuously drain down your posterior airway throughout the day and night. Therefore, the product you purchase to eliminate wetness is, within a matter of days, actually exacerbating the postnasal drip down your airway. The solution is available, though it requires a cautious and systematic approach. If you have relied on these sprays for multiple weeks, do not abruptly cease all usage and panic when your passages immediately become obstructed. That brief period of increased congestion is entirely predictable, and a much gentler transition exists to resolve it. Consult your physician or pharmacist regarding a gradual weaning schedule, as well as non-medicated alternatives such as a basic saline solution to safely dilute and wash away secretions without triggering rebound swelling. You should never discontinue or alter any therapeutic regimen independently based solely on digital media content, including my own presentations. The third error is eliminating dairy products under the assumption that they generate extra phlegm. This widespread notion is highly pervasive, and anyone experiencing persistent throat congestion is routinely advised to avoid milk and cheese because dairy supposedly creates thick secretions, causing them to abandon beloved foods for years while waiting in vain for their symptoms to resolve. Yet the congestion persists because they are combating an entirely imaginary culprit. Let us look at the actual scientific reality, which has been rigorously evaluated. In a rigorous clinical trial, investigators gathered healthy adult participants, exposed them to a standard cold virus, and meticulously monitored their dairy consumption alongside the physical volume of nasal secretions they generated. The findings revealed absolutely no correlation, showing that those who drank milk did not generate any additional congestion. A comprehensive respiratory analysis published in the medical journal Archives of Disease in Childhood arrived at an identical conclusion, stating directly that the supposed connection between dairy consumption and congestion must be permanently dismissed. Why then does milk create the physical sensation of coating your airway? Because it does temporarily coat those surfaces. Milk possesses a rich emulsified texture, and this natural creaminess leaves a temporary residue across your tongue and oral cavity that remains noticeable for several seconds following consumption. Your neurological system misinterprets this rich coating as actual congestion, leading to a rather ironic phenomenon. The specific individuals who strongly believed dairy created phlegm were the exact ones who reported the most severe symptoms despite their bodies producing no measurable increase in secretions. Their psychological expectation generated the physical sensation rather than the dairy itself. This is why falling for this misconception carries a real cost. Not only is avoiding dairy entirely pointless, but it also distracts you from identifying the true source of your discomfort for years. Every single month you spend attributing your symptoms to dairy is a month you waste failing to treat the actual physiological driver of your congestion. Let us establish a clear contrast between myth and reality to help this concept stick. The myth asserts that drinking milk thickens the secretions in your airway. The reality is that milk merely leaves a fleeting film on your tissues that dissipates within moments, and your secretory glands receive no biological signal to produce more fluid. The solution here is the most straightforward of all, which is to stop restricting dairy products for this specific reason. Maintain your normal dietary patterns and redirect your energy toward interventions that actually yield results, which we will discuss shortly. Naturally, if a certain food item upsets your digestion, you should avoid it, but you do not need to eliminate milk to resolve your throat congestion. Please share in the feedback section if someone has previously recommended giving up dairy for this issue, as I am highly curious to see how pervasive this myth remains. Taking a brief moment for a candid realization, we both understand that your most recent clinic visit did not look like this conversation. No medical provider had a spare quarter of an hour to explain the actual physiological mechanisms to you. If you appreciate in-depth educational breakdowns that do not rush, please consider subscribing and liking this content, as those simple actions represent the primary support keeping this work going. Let us move on to the fourth error, which is an overlooked factor that most individuals have never even contemplated. This fourth mistake is failing to consume adequate amounts of water. Though this issue seems almost too basic to deserve attention, it remains one of the most prominent silent contributors to airway congestion. As individuals age, two overlapping trends frequently emerge, namely the biological perception of thirst diminishes, meaning you do not feel the urge to drink as frequently, and many people intentionally limit fluids to minimize nocturnal bathroom visits. Consequently, you remain in a state of mild chronic dehydration day after day, and your throat suffers the consequences. To understand the biology, your nose and throat synthesize secretions continuously, which is an entirely normal and healthy process. According to data from the Cleveland Clinic, these internal secretory glands generate between 1 and 2 quarts of fluid every single day. You are naturally designed to swallow this fluid continuously without ever becoming aware of its presence. This substance serves to humidify the air you inhale while capturing airborne dust particles and pathogens. When your system is properly hydrated, these secretions remain low in viscosity and slide downward effortlessly, completely escaping your notice. Conversely, when you are even slightly dehydrated, that identical fluid becomes highly viscous and sticky. Rather than flowing smoothly, it adheres to the posterior wall of your throat. When you feel something sticking there, your immediate reaction is to clear your throat, which only inflames the tissues and prompts additional fluid production. Imagine a riverbed experiencing low water levels during the dry late summer months. The waterway contains the same amount of sediment as always, but due to the diminished water volume, that sediment stops moving and accumulates into a dense layer of sludge along the riverbed. Your throat secretions behave in precisely the same manner. The real goal is not to stop your body from producing fluid, but rather to ensure it remains thin enough to clear itself automatically. Here is your highly cost-effective remedy for this issue. Consume small sips of water consistently throughout the day rather than drinking large quantities all at once. Maintain a water glass within your immediate reach to make hydration effortless. Heated beverages provide additional relief for many individuals, as the warmth and rising steam help to break up sticky secretions. If you have been restricting your fluid intake to prevent waking up to use the bathroom, simply consume the majority of your water earlier in the day and reduce your intake as evening approaches. This adjustment maintains the fluid consistency in your airway without disrupting your sleep. Increasing your hydration does not generate more phlegm, but instead dissolves what is currently stagnant so your body can expel it naturally. The fifth mistake is consuming food late in the evening and reclining shortly afterward. This is the major culprit that connects all the other elements, and it is a cause that rarely crosses anyone's mind because the discomfort is felt in the throat while the actual origin lies down in the stomach. To illustrate a common scenario, you might eat a late dinner or enjoy an evening snack on the sofa, and then recline in bed within an hour or two, allowing an imperceptible substance to ascend while you sleep. The clinical term for this process is laryngopharyngeal reflux, which is commonly referred to as silent reflux, a condition where tiny amounts of digestive juices travel past the esophagus and enter the throat. The descriptor that carries the greatest weight here is the word silent. In contrast to typical acid indigestion, this specific variety of reflux generally produces absolutely no painful sensation in your chest. Experts at the Cleveland Clinic highlight that many patients experiencing this airway irritation report none of the standard signs of indigestion, making it highly unlikely that you would ever associate the issue with your digestive tract. Your only conscious symptom is the aftermath, which is a raw, sensitive throat that consistently generates fluid as a defense mechanism. Imagine your stomach when you are standing or sitting as an upright cup resting on a flat surface. The liquid sits securely at the base, well away from the opening. If you tip that cup onto its side by lying down, any liquid near the top can easily trickle out toward the rim. This is exactly what occurs in your digestive tract when you eat a late meal and go to sleep, as the upper opening of your stomach points directly towards your vocal structures. Now link this back to the entire sequence. Where silent acid irritates your tissues overnight, the inflamed lining generates excess fluid, and upon waking, you sense that heavy accumulation and clear your throat aggressively, which scratches the already vulnerable surfaces. You might then resort to a nasal spray, which within days causes rebound drip, all while you mistakenly attribute the issue to your dairy intake. This represents 5 distinct errors that mutually reinforce one another while distracting you from the true source of your discomfort. Because of this confusion, people spend years attempting to treat their sinuses, allergies, and food choices without ever addressing the actual issue situated just below. Fortunately, the remedy for this specific issue yields the most significant improvements for the majority of sufferers, and we will integrate it into our actionable plan shortly at no financial expense other than adjusting your schedule. If this explanation regarding the 5th mistake resonated with you, please write the number 5 in the feedback section below, as reading these updates helps me ensure I am providing you with valuable guidance. Let us establish a clearer anatomical framework for you, as once you comprehend this model, all 5 errors and their corresponding solutions will instantly align. Your airway is not merely an inactive pipe, it features a continuously migrating layer of fluid that operates much like a slow-moving conveyor belt. Microscopic cilia, which are far too tiny to observe with the naked eye, systematically brush a thin layer of protective fluid upward and out of your system. The scientific term for this biological structure is the mucociliary escalator, which is your body's built-in transport system designed to quietly carry captured dust, pathogens, and aged fluids up and away throughout the day. Under normal, healthy conditions, you will not feel this process occurring at all. This natural transport system only experiences issues under 2 specific circumstances. The first scenario occurs when an external irritant continually drips onto its surface. This irritating agent could be silent digestive reflux ascending from your stomach, or it might be actual postnasal drainage coming from above, which is fluid trickling down the back of your airway from your nasal passages and sinuses, a symptom the Cleveland Clinic identifies as a primary cause of chronic throat sensitivity. Regardless of the source, the biological conveyor responds in the only protective manner it can, which is by producing extra fluid to shield the tissue. The second issue arises when the fluid itself becomes dehydrated and turns sticky. This is the direct result of systemic dehydration. Under these conditions, the mechanism attempts to transport thick sludge rather than a slick film, causing the entire process to stall. Consequently, the fluid pools right where you can physically detect it. Therefore, notice the common thread among all effective remedies, which is that you must either stop the drip coming from above or below, or you must dilute the fluid so it can flow freely on its own. That is the core objective of the entire process. Observe that aggressive clearing, overusing nasal sprays, and avoiding dairy are completely absent from this list of effective treatments. Those misguided actions were never designed to support your airway's natural clearing mechanism in the first place. If this visual concept of the internal conveyor helped clarify things for you, please write escalator in the comments to let me know it made sense. That simple mental picture is the essential key to understanding the entire problem. Now let us construct your personalized recovery strategy. This is the specific segment you should document or bookmark for future reference. We will progress through these steps sequentially because the specific order is highly important. Your first step is to completely abandon the habit of forceful throat clearing. This represents the most critical modification you can make, as well as the most challenging because it has become an automatic reflex. When you experience the impulse to clear, resist the urge to cough and instead perform a deep, deliberate swallow. If you have a beverage nearby, take a modest sip and swallow it. If no liquid is available, execute a firm, dry swallow or gently hum a low pitch for a moment before swallowing. The slight vibration of humming gently separates your vocal cords, while the subsequent swallow safely guides the fluid downward as intended, completely avoiding any tissue friction. Every instance of clearing that you successfully replace with a swallow gives your delicate throat tissues a chance to recover. Commit to this change consistently for 2 weeks before evaluating its effectiveness. Your second step is to systematically dilute your secretions by maintaining steady hydration. Keep a beverage nearby and drink small amounts throughout the day rather than consuming large volumes in a single sitting. Hot liquids such as warm water, caffeine-free teas, or clear broths help dissolve sticky secretions even more effectively. If you are worried about frequent nighttime waking, simply consume the majority of your fluids during the morning and afternoon. This is the most cost-effective and natural tool at your disposal, yet it is the one most frequently overlooked. The third step, which directly addresses the silent underlying cause, is to modify when you consume your final meal of the day. Aim to conclude eating at least 3 hours before reclining, rather than just a few minutes before bed. This time frame allows your digestive system to empty before you transition to a horizontal position. Make your evening meal lighter and try to avoid heavy snacking while watching television late at night. Many individuals experience substantial improvement by elevating the head of their bed by several inches, using solid blocks under the bedposts or a sleeping wedge so that gravity naturally keeps digestive fluids resting low in the stomach all night. This single adjustment can completely transform your morning throat comfort. The fourth step, if you have been relying on over-the-counter decongestant sprays, is to coordinate a safe discontinuation plan with a medical professional. Avoid stopping abruptly and simply trying to endure the severe rebound swelling. Inquire about a gradual weaning process and ask if you can substitute a simple saline nasal wash, which is a mild salt water solution that dilutes and flushes out secretions without the risk of rebound irritation. A pure saline wash is one of the very few remedies you can utilize safely and without restriction. The fifth step is to stop worrying about the dairy myth. Continue eating your regular diet and focus your effort on highly effective changes instead, like proper hydration and meal timing. Obviously, if a particular food causes you discomfort, you should avoid it, but do not spend years restricting your diet based on a misconception. As an extra tip, if your indoor air is dry during cold weather or due to central heating, the environment can dry out your airways while you sleep, regardless of your fluid intake. Operating a compact humidifier near your bed or placing a basin of water near your heating source can keep your airway conveyor system properly moisturized overnight. If you are eager to begin this very evening, here is a quick summary of the steps. Ensure you finish your last meal at least 3 hours prior to sleeping. Consume a glass of warm water slowly during the evening hours. Elevate the head of your mattress if possible. Finally, the next time you experience the physical impulse to clear your throat, consciously swallow instead. That encompasses the entire initial strategy, consisting of 4 immediate adjustments that require no financial cost. Let us discuss the expected timeline and results, as this is the phase where many individuals prematurely abandon the plan. Your first week will center heavily on breaking the throat-clearing habit. As you consistently substitute swallowing for coughing, the persistent background irritation will begin to subside. While you might not observe an immediate reduction in fluid volume, your primary sign of progress will be decreased sensitivity and a milder tickling sensation, which indicates that your tissues are beginning to heal. By the second week, if you have successfully adjusted your dinner schedule and elevated your mattress, your morning congestion should begin to decline. Morning symptoms are the classic indicator of nighttime silent reflux, so waking up with a clearer, calmer airway is a solid sign that you have targeted the true root cause. By the fourth week, the majority of people find that their symptoms have settled into a much milder, less disruptive pattern. Keep in mind that secretions will not disappear entirely, as some protective fluid is vital for health, but it will no longer dominate your daily life. To be completely transparent, if you strictly follow these steps for a full month with no improvement, or if your symptoms worsen, that outcome provides highly valuable clinical data. It indicates that you should seek a professional medical evaluation rather than continuing to rely solely on self-care measures. As a quick commitment check, leave a comment below if you are ready to try this protocol for the next 30 days. Expressing your commitment openly significantly boosts your likelihood of staying on track, which leads us to the critical safety information you must not overlook. While the vast majority of airway congestion is benign and merely irritating, there are specific warning signs that require you to immediately halt home remedies and consult a healthcare provider promptly. You must obtain a professional medical assessment if you experience blood in your secretions, difficulty or pain when swallowing, a persistent hoarseness or vocal change lasting over 2 weeks, an unresolved neck lump or swelling, symptoms localized to only one side of your throat, unexpected weight loss, or chronic congestion accompanied by an ongoing fever. While these symptoms do not automatically indicate a severe condition, they all warrant a formal clinical examination, as physically evaluating your airway is the only definitive way to rule out serious issues, which is a task no online video can perform. Please do not delay seeking care if you notice those signs, and before concluding, I would love to know more about my audience by having you share your age demographic in the comments, as understanding if you are in your 50s, 60s, 70s, or beyond helps shape my future content since silent reflux becomes significantly more prevalent as we age. Let us summarize our main points as we conclude. Chronic congestion in your airway is rarely a simple fluid issue, but is instead a warning signal. It indicates that your vocal conveyor system is either being irritated by drainage from above or below, or is simply too dehydrated to function properly. The 5 counterproductive habits, which are aggressive clearing, dependency on nasal sprays, avoiding dairy unnecessarily, inadequate hydration, and late-night eating, do not resolve this warning signal, but rather intensify it. Therefore, adopt the opposite approach by dining earlier, drinking water consistently, substituting swallowing for clearing, safely weaning off sprays with professional guidance, and disregarding the dairy myth. Commit to this routine for a month, monitor your body for any of the mentioned warning signs, and allow your airway to function exactly as nature intended. I look forward to connecting with you in our next discussion.